I hope we're all looking to 2030 for the next World Cup. Listen, the thing I find interesting here is they talked about there being a large diaspora of Moroccan nationals inside of France, but the celebrations were more orderly. And they didn't mention, which many of us know who are based in the UK, there is a large diaspora of Moroccans actually in West London. So it doesn't actually surprise me that West London was the specific location where there was kind of that chaos erupting. And people generally know, like, football, sports in general is something that most people become very passionate about because they don't have their passions directed or presented in other areas. Like, if you're not passionate about your work, you're not passionate about your family, you're not passionate about your health, you're not passionate about your wealth, what are you going to be passionate about? You're going to be passionate about sport, football, right? And as a result, when your team loses, you're going to feel like you lost, even though no one on that team has your name on the back of their jersey. Doesn't make any sense. But at the end of the day, this is, if I'm going to put it really, part of the British way. You know, I don't want to be deep and say, you know, what you sow is what you reap, but someone could argue what you sow is what you reap. If you go across the world, people will say football hooliganism is literally connected with British culture. So what do you really expect, except there to be running wild in London as a result of the loss? Now, the thing that actually does come to me about this, I love the Moroccan people. I remember visiting Morocco a number of years ago. Beautiful country as well. One of the things I will say is this: the reason why you will most likely have more eruption of energy as it pertains to that Moroccan loss in the UK or in London specifically is actually more so connected to the fact that there isn't a large French diaspora inside of the same West London. I don't know what your thoughts are on that, but let me know in the comments below. Because a lot of the time, people think that the reason things erupt is because there's two opposing forces. And sometimes, most of the time, the actual reason things erupt is actually because there is no opposing force. There's just too much of one individual isolated force. And I think this is exactly what we're observing in terms of what was happening earlier on in July. And a lot of the time, again, we can touch some of these aspects of these topics, such as, oh, you get what you deserve, you know, what you sow, you reap. This is football hooliganism. It's just showing up in another way in the same place. But the reality is, this is all about passion. Like, the reason why things like this are going to occur is typically going to be associated with passion. People are passionate about the things they're passionate about. The question is, what are you passionate about? There's something you're passionate about that you will get up in arms, you will go to war for. And the more we understand that, the more we should be very mindful about ensuring ourselves, first and foremost, because you always have to start with yourself, but then going deeper than yourself, your family, your spouse, the people inside of your house are actually finding outlets and engagements for their passion, which makes sense. Okay, because what's going to happen alternatively is, if the only time you are able to express your passion is with some isolated incident, something that only happens every 4 years, then you're not going to be best suited or prepared to know how your passion is going to show up or overspill in the confines of specific environments, because you haven't practiced that. You haven't got enough opportunities to showcase who you are really in that field, because your passion is only showing up 4 times in a year, or once every 4 years, or wherever it is, right? This is one of the reasons why I'm interested in recreational martial arts. This is one of the reasons why I like Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu. This is one of the reasons why a number of years ago, I started training in Muay Thai, because I realized that if I'm doing something 3 times a week, if I'm doing something 4 times a week, I'm getting the kinks out of the armor. I'm getting the adrenaline out of the system. And I'm no longer going to be the person who ends up in a situation and is either a deer in headlights, which is one extreme of this situation, or B, you know, extremely aggressive about things because I don't know how to manage myself in those things. I remember a number of years ago, I was 20 years old at the time, and a coach of mine said something to me extremely profound. He said, Samuel, if you look at the research out in the States, in America, you will find that the overwhelming majority of people who are incarcerated, who are placed in prisons, are in that predicament because of a low level of literacy. There's a correlation with a level of literacy. Okay. Now, I want to share this because I think this is very important to share this extremely clearly. I'm not talking about, and the coach at the time was not talking about, a low level of intelligence, okay? And this is something that sometimes people try to mesh together. They try to assert or assume that someone who has a lower level of literacy equally has a lower level of intelligence. And that's definitely not the case. And that's partly the reason why you see, my background's education, teaching teachers how to teach as a teacher trainer, and also teaching secondary and A-level maths. And in all of the schools I worked in, I found that there were these students, these odd students, who sometimes may have been treated as though they're disaffected, treated as though they're not intellectual, right? And the reality is they were highly intellectual. They just may not have known how to articulate themselves in the same way as everyone else. And what this coach told me when I was 20, in my early 20s, was literally, if you see that correlation between literacy and people's inability to express themselves, you start to understand why so many people end up being incarcerated. So for example, the man who doesn't know how to articulate, I feel angry, or the man who doesn't know how to articulate, I feel disappointed, or the man who doesn't know how to articulate, listen, you've embarrassed me because you did this and this is how it made me feel. If you are unable, whether it's due to macho upbringing, it's different things for different people, but if you are unable for any reason to articulate yourself and express yourself and articulate where you're at in any given situation, circumstance, or scenario, you are inevitably going to end up in a predicament where your passion is going to end up showing up in an unruly fashion. So if you can't say, listen, you're getting me angry, here's the best thing for you to do right now is sit down, let me take a moment or two, and I'll come back to you and we'll continue this dialogue. If you aren't equipped with the arsenal of vocabulary or language or literacy to be able to showcase that in a dialogue, what is bound to happen is you're going to find another way to outlet that. That might be the punching of the door. That might be the actual aggression. That might be the show of aggression, where now everybody in the room knows, we pushed her buttons, we pushed these buttons, and then that becomes something else. And a lot of the time in the UK, stuff like that occurs with police being in the way. Stuff like that occurs with the authorities showing up fairly quickly and saying, hold on a minute, what's going on here? Da, 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 da. And again, if you don't have the arsenal, if you don't have a harness, if you don't have the command of literacy, if you don't have the command of articulation, if you don't have the command of emotional intelligence, social intelligence, then what ultimately happens is that passion ends up spilling over. Even as I'm saying that, it's reminding me of the verse in the Bible where David says, my cup runneth over. He was talking about good things, but the same thing can happen with negative things as well. If we don't take care of ourselves, if we don't develop ourselves, if we don't equip ourselves, our passions can end up leading us in places we never ever intended or desired to go to. So I'd love to know your thoughts on this. Why are the Moroccans in West London causing up a ruckus to the degree that they're ending up being publicized, whereas the Moroccans in France are kind of a bit calm? I don't know. Is it just the charm of the French people? I don't know. I don't believe that to be the case. So, but look, I'm signing out. If you got value from this one, you know what to do. Like, comment, subscribe, become a part of the tribe, and I look forward to seeing you on another one. As I always say, remember, small keys open up big doors. Good day, God bless. Let's go.
Small keys open big doors.